Good morning. We are still waiting for a quorum, and so from an informational standpoint, we would like to go ahead and start with our program reports, and starting off with the presentation of the Bus Rapid Transit update. Jesse?
Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Bright and early.
I don't know what to do. We're going so early. No, that's boring. We'll jump into it. I had a joke lined up. I was going to ask Trustee Cooper if he got his bike back after the thing, but we'll just say that he did. So let's jump into it. So, construction. It's essentially wrapped up. There's still some punch list items left to do. We more than likely will have one last change order amendment to come to the board, essentially cleaning up those last items. So if we take a look at this, there are light poles at Class and Northwest 13th and light poles at Northwest 63rd and Meridian that I show in progress on here, but that's really just an informational item for you guys. So essentially what has happened is working with OG&E, instead of installing like brand new light poles at the platforms, what we've agreed to do is there are wooden poles that are near those platforms, and so we've added brand new light fixtures to those wooden poles. And so I've left that in progress on here because we still have, with the contractor, we still have to go back and clean up those bases that were installed. So 63rd Meridian, if you drive by there, you're going to see some light pole bases with some cones on them until those light pole bases get removed. And then the one at Northwest 13th and Classen, same thing. There's some anchor bolts that are in the platform with the cone on it for safety that still have to get removed and taken down to grade. So until that happens, we'll show that in progress on this screen here. But essentially construction is wrapped up except for punch list items. So let's talk a little bit about operations. I think most of you remember December 3rd, just a little over a month ago, we had the big ribbon cutting, right? So Embark, OKC, City of OKC, and FTA hosted our ribbon cutting. And as always, I love a good opportunity to show some cool photos. So this is a photo of that ribbon cutting right before, or actually this is with the administrator for FTA during her speech. And then another one here, again, just showing us being a part of the community there at Homeland at Classen and Northwest 16th. And then finally, the ribbon cutting. All right, so got a cool sparklers in the background, everybody having a great time. Appreciate everybody attending that. It was a great event. Also an opportunity for us to showcase all the different partners that took place in this event. Again, our contractors, all the different city departments that we partnered with. Really appreciate everybody making this project come together. With that, we also had a lot of news coverage, right? That's always good for our system, not only for the Rapid Northwest, but also for our fixed route system. So we appreciate all of our partners there. News 9 had a great story. And then also the Oklahoma City Free Press had a great story, actually rode the system and reported on that. And then we also had a lot of great social media posts. The blue lights are a hit. A couple of Facebook posts, and you may recognize that guy there, taking the BRT downtown to enjoy a Thunder game and Christmas decorations. Gotta love that. So with that, I do want to share a couple of stories. So we've been obviously talking with our operators as they're coming back from the day, talking about how the system's going. And what we're hearing is a lot of people, new people, right? That's exactly what we want. We're getting a lot of new riders that are out trying the system for the first time. We've got a lot of folks that are using the BRT to come downtown and go to Thunder games, which is exactly what we're hoping for, right? Get those new riders that haven't necessarily tried public transit for the first time, and we're having that opportunity with the Rapid Northwest. Another awesome story was attended the MAPS 4 Citizen Advisory Board. Mr. Pace, Russell Pace, he's on those advisory boards, and he has a little Honda electric scooter. And I was talking to him about that because he said he rode the BRT into those advisory boards. And so what he does is he lives out on the northwest side of Oklahoma City. He rides a scooter to the park and ride, uses the Rapid Northwest to come downtown to come to those advisory boards. So it's really making an impact, and I appreciate the opportunity to bring this to Oklahoma City. So with that, with the launch of the Rapid Northwest and also the OKC move changes, we wanted to make sure that we got the information out there for our customers. And so one of the things that Embark staff and several city volunteers and outside volunteers did was essentially took on that role as an ambassador. And Jacqueline led that initiative with Embark. I really appreciate all the work that she put into that, and really was able to make sure that our customers were able to get to where they needed to go, right? So we made some significant changes with our fixed route system that connect with the Rapid Northwest, and without those ambassadors, folks may get confused. And so we had folks out at Blackwelder, where we make those connections with Route 3, and then we also had those folks at the Transit Center helping our customers get to where they needed to go those first couple of weeks. So this is just a couple of pictures of those ambassadors out there volunteering, having a good time. This is, of course, everybody recognizes Kristen and Toon there. And then also with that, with the launch of Rapid Northwest and the OKC Moves, another thing that we did was every year we host events at the Transit Center. And so we hosted Santa. Everybody had an opportunity to go get their picture taken with Santa. And we also hosted the health fair and half-price sale at the Transit Center during the OKC Moves launch. And this is just a couple of photos of that event taking place. A great turnout, as always. So let's talk a little bit about ridership. So this is December Rapid Northwest ridership. So for the entire month of December, our Rapid Northwest saw a little over almost 32,000 customers ride the system. That's pretty significant. Our average daily ridership was a little over 1,000, so pretty fantastic. It's our highest performing route. And then you can kind of see the ebbs and flows of the route there when it comes to per day. And then this here I thought was kind of interesting. So our average weekday ridership, almost 1,200, and then our average weekend ridership, almost 1,000. And we expect to continue to see that rise. That wraps it up. Happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions for Jesse? If not, thank you for that report.
Trustee Cooper, did you get your bike back after the event?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. Thank you.
Yes.
Have a great day.
Good job. Thank you.
Okay. Now we'll have the Mobility Management Services report.
Making sure you were going next to me and we're
Yeah.
going back to the top there. How is everyone doing today?
Excellent.
Great. So we're going to take I want to spend a little bit of time today talking with you about the assumption of our 5310 program. So I'm going to kind of fly through my first couple of slides a little bit quickly. These numbers you're seeing are the first 5 months ended November of 2023. You can see we're doing very, very well. We've had some significant trips. I wanted to share with you that we did some comparison quarter by quarter, year over year. For the meal sites, we're seeing about 300 more trips than we were last year at the same time. And then for the non-emergency medical, we're averaging about 653 more trips per week than we were at the same time last year. Our community development programs are going very well. We are about to issue our applications for next fiscal year for bus passes. Please help us spread that word to our local nonprofits and social service agencies. Obviously, we send out information on that as well, but if you hear for someone, they can email us at mobilitymanagement@okc.gov. Our Embark Well program is just absolutely taken off. I don't have pretty pictures for you because it's one of the bad things about me. I get all into the event, talking to the citizens, and completely forget to take a picture for you. So we did do an outreach event at the Northeast location the week after the grand opening. Had some really good interaction with the seniors there. They seem to be really enjoying that MAPS 3, so we're quite excited about the South location and being able to add that one as well. We did some year-over-year comparison. You can see how much the seniors are truly utilizing this service. Climb Ride is going well. We appreciate your support in approving our contract with DHS to continue this as a permanent part of our program. As you can see, we finished last year with just a little over 4,000 trips. We are now serving 100 families. We've fully expanded out. We also have 2 new coordinators. Gennaro Castellanos and Isaac Skanes have joined our team to continue the work that Stephanie Davis started with Climb Ride into the future. So we're very excited about that. They've been training for a little over a month, and they are now embedded at DHS and officing there. You'll also recall we started a new partnership with Remerge. Our partnership with Palomar was such a success. We've added a second vehicle and a driver for that. We had always intended to partner with Remerge, but that was not intended to start until spring of this year. However, their provider had to step away unexpectedly, and so they called us right before Thanksgiving and said, can you please start right now? And so we started right after Thanksgiving in November and did 82 trips that last little bit of November, and we just finished up December, and things are going very well. The participants seem to be really happy, and we're seeing that engagement that happens between our well-trained operators and the participants in these programs, which really supports the agency that's doing the other work. So let's talk a little bit about 5310. So as you know, we're going to be assuming this funding stream as the direct recipient for the Oklahoma City urbanized area. Currently in 2023, that formula allocation is $1.2 million. It is focused on seniors and individuals with disabilities, but one of the exciting things about 5310 is something called incidental use. This allows us to fill the seats on those vehicles. If we don't have 12 seniors that need to go someplace that particular day, we only have 8. That gives us 4 seats on that vehicle that we can move Climb Ride participants, Palomar participants, Remerge participants, and many other programs that we offer. And so we're very excited about what this is going to mean for us. ACOG has approved the transfer. We are now in the stage where we have scheduled a meeting with ODOT later this month to develop a really firm timeline between January and October of this year on our milestones and our steps, and we'll be reporting back out to you as that goes along. And then, of course, the FTA would need to review and approve that. Your urbanized area that this money is designed to address is your yellow there, the Oklahoma City area. Obviously, ACOG smooths out the boundaries to make it a little bit prettier. It takes care of all those little white spaces that we kind of lock off, so it's a little bit more contiguous. Norman is a small urban. We will be coordinating with them for obvious reasons since we already work with them so closely on their public transit services. And we're just really excited to see what this is going to be, because this will be a networked and fully coordinated service so that individuals, regardless of their income level, regardless of their need, regardless of their age or their status with a disability, they can still get where they need to go to live the life that we want all of our citizens here to live. Currently, we have signed on to this initial coordinated network, the Oklahoma City Housing Authority, the Community Action Agency, Daily Living Center, Harris Senior Citizens, which is a small volunteer service that helps us out in eastern Oklahoma County, the Dale Rogers Training Center, and then, of course, obviously, Palomar and Remerge will be a part of this initial thing. That's not saying that's all there is. These are our initial partners as we start working through this. We will be utilizing the wonderful software we're about to procure to support this network, and we're just really excited for you guys to see what this means going forward. And with that, I just wanted to share this with you. This is not isolated to Oklahoma City. The entire state is working on a statewide mobility network. They will have mobility managers similar to what Embark provides for our citizens across the state. Now, obviously, in some of the rural areas, a mobility manager might be serving 2, 3, 4 counties, but they will still have those resources and that connection to transit and access. And with that, I will take any questions.
Are there any questions for Marilyn?
Thank you all.
That's exciting, thank you. Our third program report is parking. Corey?
As normal, I'll be brief. A couple of months ago, we engaged Kirkpatrick Forest to do structural assessments, visual inspections on all of our parking garages. Those have been completed for the Century Center, the Arts District Garage, the Convention Center, and the Sheridan Walker Garage. Their recommendations and cost estimates are currently being reviewed, so there'll be more coming. But all in all, the garages are healthy and safe. There is some repair work that we're still looking at. Recommendations. Verge, the software that PCI, Municipal Services, our parking operator, that work continues. That's just an extremely complex, if you remember back in the day where we talked about the parking agreement with the company PCI. They have this software project. Sorry, I forget to do the slides. They have a software package that will export data from our independent revenue control systems into one source, along with importing their payables and payroll and whatnot into one system. So benefits are revenue data, transactional data, revenue analysis, some dashboard data, and then system errors and corrections so that we can finite that downtime or uptime in our system. Because right now, if we lose a device for a few minutes, we're taking it out of the system for the entire day, regardless if it's, a pay-on-foot machine that can't accept credit cards for a few minutes. We're losing 24 hours because of the tediousness it takes to manually do those calculations. That work continues. I'd expect a couple more months. At our surface lots where we've historically had a single payment device, we've added some redundancy and in order to improve the customer experience when we have large volumes pre-games or pre-events. And then lastly, our bus rapid transit ticket vending machines. Those were fully functional and tested just before the new year. A bit of a strenuous task, but we got those done for Jesse's BRT. That's all I have. Do you have any questions?
Are there any questions for Corey? Oh, thank you. We now have a quorum since Councilman Cooper has arrived. So I'll officially call the meeting to order, and we'll go back to our agenda order. And there are no items from the chairman this month. And are there any residents to be heard? There are none. And then we will go to item 4, which is approval of the minutes of the December 1st, 2023 COPTA board meeting. If you would, it's been moved and seconded. If you would vote electronically. Motion passes. Are you okay? Yeah. Okay. Moving to item number 5 is the consent docket. There are 6 items on the consent docket. Is there any items that any of the trustees would like to consider individually? If not, is there a motion to go ahead and approve the consent docket? It's been moved and seconded. Please vote electronically.
I have nothing here. There's no buttons here. Okay, all right. So I vote A. I vote yes.
Okay, motion passes. Moving on to item number 6 on the agenda, which are items for individual consideration. Item A is the amendment number 1 with Clarity Coffee for the lease premises at 431 West Main Street, Suite A. Estimated annual revenue of $27,157 for the term extension to March 31st, 2024. Jason?
Yes, so as the memo indicates, we're asking the trust to approve this item, extending the term of the lease agreement with Clarity Coffee. As you know, Clarity's been a longstanding tenant going back since to 2015. Actually, I think one of our first tenants in the Arts District garage as we were building out that tenant space. And, their business has done well, and as such, they'd like to make some improvements to the space. All that said to say is we're asking the trust to extend the term while we work with Clarity to negotiate a new lease and have some further discussions about any potential improvements they want to have made or requesting that we consider making.
Okay. Is there any discussion or comments on this item? If not, is there a motion to go ahead and approve? It's been moved and seconded. Please vote electronically. All in favor?
I vote yes.
Not yet. Oh, you're not recording my vote? I vote yes, too. I have a green yay on mine. Okay. Motion passes. Okay, item B is amendment number 1 with Toller Manufacturing Company for additional bus stop amenities, estimated annual cost of $385,000. Jason?
Yes, sir. Excuse me. Yes, sir. The amendment that we have for the trust to consider this morning, it really is to serve a few purposes. Just as a reminder, and as the memo indicates, we've actually had an agreement in place with Toller Manufacturing since 2019. They are the provider of the bus shelters that you see throughout the Embark system. And so what we're wanting to accomplish with the amendment is one, and you can see this detailed in the attachment that's in your packet, attachment A1. But what we're wanting to accomplish is to increase the contract to account for the purchase of additional shelters. So with the funding from the MAPS 4 program being utilized to add bus shelters to the system, we felt as a transit provider, as an agency, it would be important that those shelters were consistent and the same throughout. And so as such, we are asking the MAPS office to purchase these same shelters that we've had throughout our system as they purchase shelters to add to the system. So that's really the one thing that we're accomplishing. The other is that we're also adding to the contract some additional amenities, for example, bike racks. The new MAPS 4 bus shelters will have bike racks. Our original contract did not, include bike racks. So we're adding some additional amenities as well. So I thought it was probably worth an explanation. The memo itself indicates that the contract is being, increased to $2.5 million. If you look at the $2.1 million estimated to be spent on shelters, and then the $385,000 that we have estimated as COTPA's cost. And the reason for that is we wanted to make sure we indicated how much of that contract we thought would be funded and utilized by MAPS. So that's the primary amount there, that 2.1, will be to fund or will allow MAPS 4 to purchase shelters. The $385,000 is really our estimated cost on future replacement parts, maybe an occasional shelter if we have to replace an entire shelter. And then that, of course, that would be funded out of our transit operating account. So it's just a little bit of a unique item in that we're expanding the contract. We're recognizing the fact that MAPS 4 will purchase from that contract, but really all we're asking COTPA to approve in terms of funding is the $385,000.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments on this item? If not, is there a motion to go ahead and approve item B? It's been moved and seconded.
I vote yes.
I vote yes. Okay, motion passes. Item C is amendment number 2 to restatement of agreement with Tyler Outdoor Advertising for media, advertising, and bus stop shelter repair services, estimated minimum annual net revenue of $72,000, made retroactive to January 1st, 2024 through December 31st, 2034.
Yes, sir. And so as you mentioned, this is a restatement of a longstanding agreement between COTPA and Tyler Media, whereas, as we know, Tyler sells advertising for the street furniture, whether it be a bus bench, whether it be a bus shelter. A portion of that revenue is received by COTPA to offset some of our operating costs. And so we have been working with Tyler over the last year, really talking about options for renewing this agreement based on the fact that, you know, our street furniture inventory and the required maintenance of that inventory, which Tyler currently performs, is going to be changing significantly. And so specifically, if you think about our existing inventory of street furniture, we have approximately 270 shelters in the system, which again, Tyler maintains, but with the addition of the MAPS 4 bus shelters, over the next, you know, couple of years, that shelter inventory is going to increase to closer to 700. And there's just obviously a lot more maintenance that goes into maintaining a shelter versus a bench. Goes without saying, there's replacement parts that are involved with shelters that you don't see with benches. A little bit more of the mowing and edging, power washing, those kinds of things. So there is more maintenance that goes into that. So as such, we've been working with Tyler to figure out a way that we could, you know, determine a mutually agreeable agreement where COTPA could still receive revenue for those assets, because those are assets that are in our system, and we or the city will be owning more of those assets, yet at the same time provide a mechanism to where Tyler could essentially recoup their costs of the additional maintenance that's anticipated with those shelters. So all that said to say, we've had a lot of discussion with that, and what we have before the trust to consider today is a new restated agreement that, and I'm just going to hit the highlights. One is it maintains the minimum annual guarantee, or MAG, and that's actually the amount that we have referenced in the agenda item. When we say, you know, we have an estimated minimum annual net revenue, that's that MAG. So regardless of what advertising sales are, COTPA is guaranteed to receive that $72,000. Now, fortunately, every year that I can recall, we've always exceeded that MAG, but we do have that in there as like a certain level of minimum guarantee. The other thing that we are looking to change is the remuneration section of the contract. Currently, the way the contract is structured is COTPA receives 10% of the net revenue from advertising for street furniture that is owned by Tyler. As you know, COTPA has made a significant investment in adding shelters over the years, so we now have assets in the system. So we have COTPA-owned shelters. And so for the shelters that are owned by COTPA, currently our net revenue is 55%. Now, granted, that's a small percentage of the existing furniture that's out there. So as we, again, have been working through this, what we are proposing is just taking COTPA's portion of the revenue from a 10 and a 55 to a straight 15% of the net revenue, whether we own the assets or whether Tyler owns the assets. With that, we would estimate to retain, you know, our current level of revenue. In other words, we don't, the advertising revenue fluctuates significantly sometimes depending on the sales, but we do believe that we're certainly not going to hurt ourselves, if you will, by going to that split. The other thing that this agreement does is it also allows for a $1,000 installation fee. So Tyler is, if this item is approved, Tyler will do the installation of the MAPS 4 bus shelters, and so as such, we've included a $1,000 installation fee. That will be funded by MAPS, but again, that helps them, recoup their costs of constructing those shelters for us. And then finally, the term, with the agreement that we have proposed here, would be extended to 2034. And although the first years of the agreement have us, meaning COTPA, receiving 15% of the net revenue, we do have escalation built into the contract so that we eventually work up years 6 through 10 to 20% of the net revenue, and then 10 years and after 25% of the revenue. So I think I've summarized all this, actually all the changes between the contract, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, are there comments or questions?
I have a comment.
Okay.
Oh, well, a few comments, actually. The ability for us to be able to have advertising on these bus shelters and as bus benches, I feel is extremely important for us as a city. Especially having a marketing background myself, being able to have advertising that is accessible and effective is very important, especially to small businesses and nonprofits. And I have in my experience seen bus bench and bus shelter advertising to be accessible and effective. Therefore, I feel like it's an important element for us to have available to the community. I also would say that as stewards of public dollars, having an opportunity for earned income like we have here is also very important. This produces a significant amount of revenue for COTPA, and something that I think has been very important for us and will be very important for us to maintain going forward as well. I had some initial concerns due to what I felt was a material change in percentages, but after looking and reviewing the numbers, a lot of the questions I have really can't be answered until we have something to compare to. But especially looking at the escalator portion of this agreement, I feel like that is an important element that really helps with my comfort level of the agreement, because previously 15% of the net revenue was about where we were, but it seems that the overall percentage of the net revenue coming to COTPA has been increasing, however, not at these percentage amounts overall. So having in 5 years to be able to escalate to the 20%, and then I realize that this is a 10-year agreement, so we won't realize that 25% under this current agreement, but the expectation would be that when we renew, we would be at the 25%. Increases my comfort level substantially. So for that, I will support this agreement.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a question. Jason, does this agreement contemplate that the shelters that are added by the city through the MAPS program will continue to be maintained under this agreement? So the mowing and the trash cleanup and all that?
Well, our COTPA staff, we do the trash removal.
Okay, but the mowing
And that's been an established practice for some years now.
Right.
But all of the repair to the shelters, the mowing, the power washing, all of that will be done by Tyler system-wide.
Including the new shelters?
Yes, yes.
And I think that that's an important factor here too, because I believe that as a trust, and certainly we maintain our brand by how well our shelters are maintained. And I think that that makes a big difference for us. So I appreciate your comments and I echo them. I'd like to be able to tell the MAPS 4 program manager to report to the advisory board that we support the continued use of advertising to facilitate both those maintenance activities and revenue to our system. So.
I have is this on? Good. I have complicated feelings about this proposal. on the one hand, I hear what we just heard from, there we go. I knew something was weird. On the one hand, I hear the concerns about the maintenance cost, because otherwise we would be asking maybe the city of OKC from its general fund to tend to those costs. I hear that. I'm also aware that we have 2 upcoming new maps for bus rapid transits that annually will be about a $4 to $4.5 million operating cost, and we're gonna have to find those funds. And as a council member, I've already received an email about this year that, buckle up, we might have to reduce, some services this year because of possibly decreased revenue. I hear that. For me, I understand those are real life cost. For me, there is also a real life history that I've mentioned so many times from here. We're all very aware of it. We, as a city government, stopped prioritizing public transportation before I was born, tore up our streetcar tracks. We didn't provide Sunday bus service, as we know, until just a few years ago. We did not prioritize public transportation for our people. The services that we just heard Dr. Dillon walk us through beautifully and expertly, those are services that this city government, through its general fund, should have been providing for decades for its seniors to its students. So, in my mind, we should be finding dollars in our city budget to be paying for staff to go do this work. That is my bottom line. Like that, and we need to make sure that's clear. I believe Mayor Holt was the first mayor in this city to describe public transportation as, quote, a core service. A core service. And I, as someone who teaches English and pays attention to language, that language hit me hard. It was intentional language. He was trying to get the city residents and staff and other elected leaders to understand that just as police and fire and parks are core city services, so too is public transportation. We have treated it as an afterthought, not this trust. This trust, for every year I've been here since 2015, has treated it as a priority. And you have fought and you have advocated and you have squeezed lemonade out of lemons, blood from turnips. So I just want to make very clear this is not a critique of anyone on this trust. It is not a critique of any bit of Embark staff, but sometimes we have to name the historical context in which we reside. Because of that historical context, we have turned to the private sector to do this work. We've outsourced it, in other words. So just want to make sure we're clear about what's happened here. And so that's my problem number one. That is not a critique of anyone who works for Tyler. That is a literal historical reading. And we can be mad about it if we want, but to say it is to speak the truth. 2, I pulled up, as I saw Trustee Hill just do too, when you look at TOLAR from the previous item, and you look at the space that these advertisements occupy, there's a significant amount of image from whoever the client is that occupies that shelter space. And we are doing, in other words, we are putting that as art all across our city and our neighborhoods. And I guess my concern with that are kind of twofold, which will lead me into a third thing, but I don't want to just jump into that third thing quite yet. To Trustee Ruiz's comments about nonprofits. My mother, as I mentioned, fell recently, and yesterday we had the very uncomfortable moment of trying to figure out, because I had some meetings I have to go to for her next scheduled doctor's appointment, how do we get her to her next doctor's appointment? It's outside of the area Dr. Dillon is describing because she's at 15th and Midwest Boulevard. That was a very uncomfortable conversation that she and I had to have. Why are we not advertising then for our city residents these nonprofit services on these bus shelters? There are many. I rushed from that moment with my mother yesterday, back to this city, back to this building, to sit with Maps for Folk, the director Todd, our consultant, to talk about mental health and where we are going to place the crisis centers. Maybe it's just a crisis center, I learned. And part of the problem is the difficulty of making that location decision is the need is everywhere. It wasn't just that we didn't prioritize public transportation services. The city has not provided mental health services. It has not provided senior services. It has not provided services to people under some ridiculous notion of small government and low taxes, and you get what you pay for. And what you pay for are those uncomfortable moments like I had with my mother yesterday. I'm sorry, there's just such a real life experience that gets lost sometimes. So that leads me to number 3. I've already discussed with Director Fairbrush here that, and I've pulled this up on my screen, and it might be worth the other trustees. You've already heard me say this. I have mentioned this to my Citizens Advisory Board for Maps as well. You know, when you do a Google image search of Seattle Bus Mural, and I learned this not on my own, but because I attended a public transportation conference with COPPA a year ago, October, and took a bus mural tour, where in their city, and remember, we are not some podunk town, we are the 20th largest city in these United States of America. We are the 6th fastest growing. We are essentially Seattle. I believe we just took their basketball team and retained it. If we want to talk big league, then our bus shelters need to be big league too. I am forever grateful of Councilman Hinkle when he took a tour with me of Sisu, how on one of the bus shelter or bus stops, bus benches, there is now an advertisement that's functional pointing the people who get off the bus on Pennsylvania how to connect to Sisu Youth Services. That is something, I didn't ask him to do that either. That was something on his own accord, someone from the South Side, not Ward 2, understood that need, and we did that. The problem is, it's a bench. It's not protecting anyone from anything, right? And there's no sidewalk around there, right? So we need to, and I believe I have a commitment, but I want to, in public now, and hear that commitment for people. When I look at this bus shelter here in Seattle, I see art all over it. And it's not just any art. It is art that tells the stories of the different communities in Seattle, their Russian history, their Jewish history, their Black history, their queer history. In other words, what is a city but its people? I believe that's rhetoric on our own public parking garages. I'm gonna keep citing our own stuff. I'm not just pulling this out of my rear. This is real. So I guess my question, I'm very concerned about this being a 10-year agreement. And I'm actually concerned about the idea that Trustee Reese just pointed out that's in the contract. This is a 10-year agreement that only at the end of 10 years will we be turning to a 25%. That assumes we're just gonna keep renewing this forever and always. But as of right now, I have no commitment to shelter art. I have no commitment to the, what is that percentage of shelter art? What about our Czech population, our Scottish population? We don't tell their histories. There's nothing in our schools that even tells the histories of who our people are, and what makes us one OKC. So I'd like to hear a commitment about the percentage that we could possibly be looking at for, I even get a soundtrack to what I'm asking for. But I'd like to get some sort of commitment or some sort of understanding of what is the percentage of shelters that would be public art. And when you look at the one I'm looking at right now, there is not one single bit of advertising on it. Not one bit. Not anywhere. Not anywhere. So I'd like to know where we can do something similar. I'd also like to know where we could be better advertising the nonprofit services like Remerge, like the various stuff that Dr. Dillon describes, because our people, too many of them don't know it and too many of them need it. On a concluding note, as I get those responses, I was elected to this position. I have no allegiances to anyone but the people who elected me. I understand then for years, we have acted, too many have acted in a place of scarcity, and they don't ask for the thing because they know that it's not been a priority. I'm going to ask for it. I will use this position for the next 4 years to ask for these things and make the city manager and that office tell us no and explain why these services and why this access to information is not a priority. It needs to be a priority. It must be a priority. And I feel more passionate about it than ever after what I am going through with my mother right now. So, first questions first, are there opportunities? I understand you all negotiated a contract, but are there opportunities to revisit what we're advertising on there instead of just private sector, shoes or whatever it is, but these vital city services that we provide and these vital services that our nonprofit sector provides? That's one question. And then the second question is this mural question. I know that was long, but that's where I am. And I can get to a yes, but right now I'm not gonna lie, I'm not there yet.
I can answer the mural question. So, I think because of the longstanding history we have with Tyler, we have on many occasions discussed specific locations, street furniture, advertising. There's been many examples where Tyler has worked with us. If we said, hey, we need a bench moved, they may have sold that advertisement, but they'll move it. Same thing with the shelter. So we've always had I think a good reciprocal relationship there. And so I'm saying that to say that, and again, I have not talked with Tyler about this concept, but I would think we would have the opportunity to identify shelters, new shelters or existing shelters within our system that we wanted to reserve for public art. I think we could, a thought is certainly leverage the expertise of the city's existing Office of Arts and Cultural Affairs, perhaps to give us some guidance based on where new shelters are going. Are they in significant locations or areas where significant things in our city's history have happened? Or anyway, would lean on them for their expertise. So all I said to say is I'm confident that we could come up with some amount of shelters that we could dedicate to public art. The question about the mix of advertising for nonprofits versus advertising for private sector companies, that's just not my area of expertise. I cannot comment on that. I don't know how it would impact Tyler's financial model, really. I don't know.
Sure. Well, I appreciate the first answer. And I no offense to Tyler, I am so less concerned about their financial model than I am connecting Ward 2 residents to these services. And it's not just the nonprofit world. There are services this city provides that our residents do not know about. There are services that this city provides our residents do not know about. And we have city assets like these shelters where we could be advertising those services. That's what I'm saying. I don't know I know there are representatives from Tyler here. If they want to maybe speak to us on this, maybe this isn't the most appropriate place for those sorts of conversations, but I'm willing to partner. I just see the people who are mostly utilizing public transportation are the people who would be utilizing the sort of services I am talking about. And so thusly, we have the opportunity with these shelters to connect people better to that information. And again, if you were literally just to pull up a Google image search of Seattle Bus Mural and you look at this, and it just looks nice. It looks like something you would want in your neighborhood. So I don't know, how would we even begin to have a conversation about that?
James, I know that, if I can interject,
Thank you, Chair.
Our parking garages have always reserved a 1% for public art. I don't know whether these bus shelters, we can start out by saying, okay, 1% will be reserved for public art shelters on 165 new ones. That is 2. It's not a big quantity, but it would maybe be a start to get us into a conversation of the example I used yesterday in talking to Jason was maybe the red tile roof on the bus shelter in the Paseo area, because it matches the identity of the neighborhood. That was just off the top of my head, but we could find them in our Asian district or other areas of the city. But to go ahead and try and create the shelter as public art, again, that does not speak to the display advertising. That's a 4-foot by 7-foot area that is sold on 2 sides of the bus shelter. So, but as with that, I'm concerned about decreasing the amount of revenue that we would receive, because we scrimp and scrape for every dollar we can get, and a lot of it is just subsidized by our city. So I just want to not lose sight of the fact that we would like to make some revenue out of this, but the public art in the building of the shelters, I think, is an appropriate thing.
I think
Make a comment, maybe a suggestion, because there are some parallels that can help, I think, address some of the concerns. First of all, I want to say that, of course, Tyler Media is a local company, and they do a lot of good for the community, especially in terms of when you talk about their broadcast side. In their, in any kind of advertising, there's inventory, and many times there's unused inventory. So a lot of times what broadcasting companies will do, and that Tyler Media has done a great job of doing, is that on unused media, they will air PSAs. And so there's a parallel there that, I don't know what percentage of our outdoor is unused. Of course, I don't think we can expect for Tyler Media to absorb the brunt of any production there. But as you said, we could potentially work with our city, public arts and other places like that to cover the cost of production, but maybe be able to utilize some of that unused inventory. The great thing about outdoor, and I'm not exactly sure of the installation of these ads, but they may also be able to be moved around into unused inventory. So, so just a suggestion. I don't want to further restrain, I guess, percentages or usage of the bus shelters or the inventory, but maybe considering in that spirit of what has already been practiced in other medias for PSAs, to be considered in the spirit of the outdoor as well. And with that, maybe we can hear some comments from Tyler Media themselves.
I believe we have Tony Tyler here from Tyler Media, and would welcome his comments.
Thank you. Thank you for the consideration today, and I want to take the opportunity to thank Jason and his staff. They're absolutely fantastic group of people to work with, as you well know that. In response to what you've suggested, what if Tyler committed to any unsold inventory is available for public art or for the nonprofits? Would that be acceptable?
I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're saying when you say unused
Let's
inventory.
say there are 100 bus shelter advertising faces available, and we sell 80 of them. There would be 20 faces that would be available for public art or nonprofits. As long as they paid for the artwork, they would be available to use those 20 spots.
I mean, maybe. I just don't know.
For what you are requesting, that is incredibly generous. I think Mr. Trustee Ruiz can speak to that. It's a common practice that we already use right now. That's what we've done for the 40 years that we've done this. Any unsold inventory is available to nonprofits, and happy to put up public art. I think that's awesome. We love it. We had Oklahoma Contemporary do something about 3 years ago. No advertising, just art, and it was awesome.
Oh, could I? So one thing with the suggestion or the option you've made is, and I'm hearing Trustee Cooper talk specifically about some of the services that the city is either involved in that can help residents, or the city will be involved in that will help residents. You know, for example, investments that we as a transit agency are making in some of the mobility services, or thinking big picture, the MAPS 4 venues and facilities that are coming online. I think maybe what would help is if we had an option to influence what nonprofit. I don't know if that's an appropriate ask, but if we had some influence on what nonprofits we could get on that unused inventory.
Certainly.
Might be helpful.
Yes. Well, I can tell you have someone right over your shoulder who's nodding their head that I really trust their guidance. So you have, maybe that's an angel, I don't know. But so you have someone in support of what you're saying, which gets my attention. I guess my only concern with just saying like, yes, woohoo, is I don't want to say yes to something that I don't know, like when you say unused, so how many shelters are we ultimately going to have? A little less than 500?
Well, no, we'll ultimately have probably in the neighborhood of 700 shelters. And then, of course, we'll still have a considerable amount of benches. And speaking of that non-used inventory, I kind of was curious how that worked. Now I have a better understanding, but I think we've all seen lots of benches and shelters with, you know, either a public service announcement or reference to a nonprofit. So I would think it would probably apply to whatever street furniture was unused.
I guess my only concern is I don't want it to be a small number. Like of that 750, I don't want it to be like 20 or 30, you know what I mean? I would like it to be a significant number, and I just have no idea how we would even begin to calculate that. Like, what are we looking at, I guess is
Do you
kind
have
of.
any idea what the unused inventory is right now?
If say 80% sold, so 80% of the spaces are sold. So when we get to capacity, there's going to be about 1,700 faces available. If you get 10% of those, that's 170 faces. That's a massive number of street furniture advertising throughout our city. That's huge opportunity for the nonprofit sector and the public art sector to be exposed to.
And then the other thing with that is I wouldn't want, so I'm guessing some of your advertising collaborations would want, you know, there's probably like prime real estate around Plaza, or you just heard, you know, with Paseo, with that sort of stuff. I would want those up for discussion. And you see what I mean? But I would imagine that would get in the way of your, I believe I heard the word bottom line earlier.
One thing that's important to realize is it's a partnership, and it gets in the way of the bottom line of the city too. Mm-hmm. So when those spaces are available, the nonprofit world gets them. It's been our family's practice for decades, and we will continue to do that for the city and for our community.
I like what I'm hearing. I just still would like for we can't accomplish what Seattle has done in terms of the bus murals if we remove from some of these, historic neighborhoods with these communities if we remove the ability to do public art on those. Do you follow what I'm saying? And so if we can square that circle right now, then I'm good. Like, if we can figure out how, I think what you're saying, I appreciate it. I think I really do appreciate it. I'm so sorry that you're walking into 60 years worth of history. I'm sorry, but here we are. So if we can just figure out, kind of to your earlier first comment, do you see a world where we can still do these kind of art murals? It's a balance where maybe there are some nearby that are getting them what they need, and there's some nearby that are speaking to the residents and their communities.
I do think, and I think I'm hearing, some assurances of some type of quantity or order of magnitude here of how many shelters would possibly be available for this nonprofit / art purpose. A thought is, again, because of the partnership we have, I'm sure we could potentially have a conversation after this meeting to try to memorialize that, maybe in a follow-up agreement MOU to present to the trust that essentially says, I think kind of what we're all hearing is we're going to leverage this partnership to satisfy, some of the really needs, if you will, of getting the word out about our nonprofits. Also, leveraging these bus shelters to capture some of the cultural significance of our community and memorialize that. Mm-hmm. It's just, in my mind, at this point in time, it's hard to come up with that quantity, but I think we would have commitment to work together off this, bring something back to say, this is what we're thinking.
Okay, can I ask another question? Okay, so you've got two costs involved. One is preparing the artwork for a nonprofit or for art for the sake of art. That who's going to bear that cost? Now, you said that it would be up to the nonprofit or up to a third party to come in and prepare that media for display purposes, the hard stuff, the hard paper, I guess, or.
Yes, sir.
And then you all would be at some point obligated to go ahead and post it once it's presented to you at your expense.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so those two things are the kind of the two expense points. He can't put it up if it's not there. And so, and we as a transit agency aren't in the business of preparing that either. So a third party's got to step forward and be interested in doing that along with us. And that maybe is a little bit of the squishiness. I don't understand who's going to do that, but obviously there would be some nonprofits, maybe the Contemporary or the Museum of Art or somebody like that would do that. Yeah. They would also like to advertise their own venues, but just art for the sake of art or telling our history of in various areas, I don't know who prepares that.
Well, so maybe I can provide some insight. Of course, I've served on many nonprofit boards. If I can use Sunbeam as an example, Sunbeam, if they were interested in trying to utilize this opportunity to have a PSA space on radio or TV, they would go through the expense of producing the spot. So they would pay for a production company to actually create the 30-second commercial or the 60-second radio commercial, and then hand over a finished product essentially to the broadcasting company to then utilize on available PSA space. So traditionally, that's the way that works. So I would assume that this would be a similar situation.
I've got a question. Okay. Steve?
I never turn my mic on, so I don't know how to do this. Am I on?
I'm so proud of you.
There you go. So I have some familiarity with this business too, and Tony's offer is both common and generous, I think, with the unused inventory. And hearkening back to what Barney just said, maybe to get to where you want to be, I mean, it is inventory, right? And so what you do is perhaps you get the fact that there'd be unused inventory, which would be no cost other than the cost of producing it, they could always buy inventory. You could get a nonprofit to say, or an arts group to say, we want to have this bus station with a mural that highlights the history of the Paseo, and they just flat out buy it. And I don't know if there's a reduced rate for nonprofits, but I think that we're all on the same page, basically. I mean, one thing I don't want to get lost is there's a cost to the maintenance of these facilities, and the more we would give away, the more burden the city would take on and COPPA would take on for the maintenance. And I think we'd all agree that we have better uses of our money than maintaining bus stops. So just a few thoughts. Like I said, it's very common to do what he's suggested, and the percentages are significant, I think. So I don't know. I like where this is headed. I like your input on it, but I want us to make sure that we maintain some thought about the cost of maintenance, that we just, that's not necessarily an expense I would want to take on as a trustee.
Yeah, okay. Everything sounds like it's moving in a productive direction. I think maybe something you had said to me, Director Fairbrush, when we were talking a day or two ago, is, it keeps doing that, huh? So repeat. We're moving in a productive direction. I think all of these comments are good. Something you had mentioned to me previously is, and I think you said it earlier today, talking with, Arts Council, but then I think you and staff have already reached out to other municipalities, because it's not just Seattle that's done this approach. Maybe come back to us and kind of present like holistically, kind of building on what we just heard from everybody, like what could this vision look like over the next 10 years of this contract and ultimately, 8 years of maps for making these transit investments. I guess that would be my request.
Yes, and as you mentioned, we as staff did initially start doing some research on other cities, and basically in the process of trying to put together a policy for the trust to consider regarding, public art on shelters. So I'm happy to engage staff again, see where we're at on that. Really we put a lot of those type of things on hold as we were gearing up to launch the Rapid, but we'll certainly re-engage. In fact, was doing a little bit of research even yesterday in Fort Worth, riding the TexRail system, seeing what they were doing in terms of public art on the train platforms, and some really neat ideas that I learned about in terms of how they're able to install the art, yet if for some reason it's damaged, easily replicate it so it can just be reinstalled. And so, yeah, to your point, it's very common in Seattle, but we're seeing it in more and more cities, I think, are taking advantage of the street furniture for the public art and to tell the story of the city. So.
And I love your language. You're telling the story of, and something you said earlier, you're telling the story about these investments too that we're making, whether it's the Version Hub, Palomar, you name it. And I just want our people to well, you've already heard, but just having that knowledge and having that access and just putting this there. So I think this is all really good direction. I appreciate everyone's time and input. This was all, very useful. And thanks for bringing that offer to the table. And
Certainly.
Dr. Dillon, thanks for your nodding of head, because it made me feel better. So, okay. All right. Thanks.
Okay, so are there any more questions? Do we want to consider this amendment number 2 as a standalone item, then with a follow-up memorandum of agreement or another amendment?
Yes, sir.
To follow up that would address that issue more specifically, that would get everybody's agreement.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Tony. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your partnership. It's a pleasure to serve the city.
Thank you. Okay. I guess we're for item number C, or is there a motion to move to approve amendment number 2? It's been moved and seconded. If everyone would vote electronically.
I'd like to vote yes.
And I have voted yes, even if it doesn't show. Yes. Motion passes. Okay, thank you. We're moving on to ratification of claims and payroll for the period of December 5th through December 27th, 2023. Are there any questions or comments about our claims and payroll? If not, is there a motion to ratify? It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, vote electronically or say yes. I vote yes. Motion passes. Moving on to our financial reports for the schedule of revenues and expenses, budget to actual for the month ending of November 30th, 2023. Jason?
Yes, sir. Have a few reports to highlight on the financials this morning. I'll spend most of my time on the transportation operations and just a few comments on the remaining lines of business. If you would look at page 2 of your budget to actual, this is 5 months ending November 30th. So we're starting to chip away at the year here, and based on where we're at through 5 months of the year, I wanted to really, kind of direct your attention to the bottom line and then make a few comments. Bottom line is that our expenses through 5 months of the fiscal year have exceeded our revenues by about $977,000. We typically set the budget up knowing that we're going to have some ebb and flow and some timing in terms of revenues catching up to expenses. However, this year we have a couple of variations or fluctuations in our expenses that we're keeping a close eye on, and one is primarily our supplies budget. So if you'll look at our supplies down there, we are at about $641,000 above where we had expected to be through 5 months of the fiscal year. We've been watching that pretty closely. We meaning, and I know Jesse primarily has been working with our fleet division to really analyze those costs and see what we can do to, try to manage them conservatively through the rest of the year. But really the fact is the cost of bus parts is high, and it continues to increase. We have not made a change in our budget for some years on how much we have allocated to bus parts, and I think we're at a point where when you take last year's amount, we're essentially able to absorb, but then again, continuing inflation on those prices of bus parts, it's really catching up to us. So, that's part of, although a lot of times in these meetings, we don't have a whole lot of fluctuations to talk about and thankfully not a lot of things to alert to the trustees to. This is one time where I would say we are watching bus parts very carefully, and we don't have an answer for stopping the increasing costs. So we're trying to manage, our inventory, but at the same time, and this is, and Jesse and I have discussed this, but at the same time, not go into a mode at all where we would defer any type of maintenance. We're not, and in fact, we would be coming back to the trust potentially saying we may need to amend our budget if that's what it comes down to before we would manage to the point where we would be, deferring maintenance and just really costing us more money in the long run. So again, it's just something we're going to continue to actively manage, but I wanted to make sure I pointed that out to you. In terms of revenues, looking at...
Can I make a quick comment?
Oh, yes, sir.
About deferred maintenance. I think we deal with deferred maintenance both in facilities and in vehicles. And sometimes you have a little bit of flexibility on facilities, but deferred maintenance on vehicles means liability and safety risks. So just wanted to make a comment about the importance of us not getting into a situation where we have deferred maintenance on vehicles.
Right. Yep, and certainly appreciate your perspective on that, and that it is in alignment with ours. We don't want to get into a position where we're putting needed repairs off. It's just a costly thing. other reasons you mentioned, liability, safety, and it's very difficult to catch up once you start getting a little behind. So as far as the revenues go, again, we're actually trending just slightly ahead on our overall revenues. We're about 82,000 more than what we had projected. There's really no significant fluctuations. You'll see we're doing a little better than what we had anticipated in interest. We're underperforming a bit on the fare boxes, or revenue we receive from the fare box and from fare media sales, if you combine those. Really, what I would mention is in terms of revenues, the federal grants are pretty much, our federal grant draw, our reimbursements have been pretty much in line with what we have expected. We will be making a draw or reimbursement request of about 1.2 million for this month. So we should see that federal grant revenue not only increase, but probably, or will surpass what we had budgeted. And then the other piece that I just wanted to direct your attention to would be the amount that we get from the state. We always typically, it has fluctuated, but a lot of times we will get that in the third or fourth quarter of the fiscal year. And so if you think about, adding another $1.2 million in federal grants, the state subsidy comes in, will certainly narrow or eliminate, I think, that gap between revenues and expenses. But we're monitoring it all and just wanted to provide some explanation to let the trustees know we were. Moving on to page 4, I'll just talk briefly about parking operations. Again, there's really no major variances in terms of revenues or expenditures from what we had expected. But again, directing your attention to the bottom line, our revenues are in excess of our expenditures by about $1.5 million through 5 months of the fiscal year. So we are certainly on track and trending to be able to add to our reserves at the end of the year, which is certainly very important on the parking side of operations because, as Corey mentioned earlier, doing our due diligence, we're in the process of doing an assessment of our garages, kind of setting up what our maintenance needs are for the next 5-year capital plan. So as we build up those reserves, that's what allows us to be able to maintain our garages. And then finally, I think I'll just finish up my comments on page 7. This is the streetcar operation. And again, no significant variations in terms of total revenues or total expenditures, but directing your attention to the operating loss or income, we are actually, our revenues are in excess of our expenses by $447,000, again, through 5 months of the fiscal year. Happy to answer any other questions.
Are there questions or comments about our financials? If not, is there a motion to receive the report? It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please vote electronically. I vote yes. Item passes. Moving on to our program reports, we've actually heard our program reports. And so is there a motion to receive all of the program reports? And again, I always go back and look at the last page of the program reports, which is a summary of services on our Embark system. And we're up over 10% in ridership in all of our areas of transit services this year. So we're doing a good job. So it's been moved and seconded. Please vote electronically. I vote yes. Motion passes. Okay, items from the trustee. Laura? We'll start with you. Robert?
I've already done my talking for the year.
Nothing.
Okay. Can we document that? He just said the same.
We'll see you all again in April.
Yeah.
Comments.
Anyway, thank you all very much. If there's nothing else, we are adjourned.